You know what, let's do the murderer one next. So, in Sweden, let's go back in time. We're already in Britain right now. We're saying goodbye to the mom. She can sleep well now. I wonder if she was hot. I think she was single. We're saying goodbye to the mom. Bye, Mom. Saying goodbye to her kids. And then we're going to take a plane and go through a time portal, because now we're going to Sweden in the year 1932. Now we're landing in Sweden in 1932. So, what would that be? Like, a little, about 90 years ago, roughly. I don't know. Anyway, so there was a young prostitute there. There was a lot of prostitutes there, but the one in particular we're going to talk about was plying her trade. Her name was Lily Lindstrom, 32-year-old prostitute. She worked out of her apartment. Her neighbors knew her. Seemed to be a relatively nice person. Her neighbors didn't have much of a problem with her. One of her neighbors said she always came to my apartment and asked for condoms. She might have been a prostitute too, I don't know. But anyway, so everything was going fine for Lily. And then one day, she doesn't knock on her neighbor's door. And the neighbor's not like, man, she must have gotten enough condoms. She actually talked to the neighbor quite frequently. Like every morning, they would have tea together or coffee or whatever they do in Sweden. She doesn't come to the neighbor's door. After a couple days, oh yeah, look, I'm looking at my notes here. Her neighbor, Minnie Johnson, actually was a prostitute. That's why she had so many condoms. Anyway, so after a couple days, she alerts the landlord or the authorities, or probably both. And the cops come into the room. And unfortunately, Lily's dead. And the cops are like, okay, interesting crime scene. Lily was laying face down in the bed. She was naked, completely naked, and her clothes were folded up and placed on a chair. They knew that she had recently had sex because they found a used condom, and it was hanging out of her body still. She had suffered repeated blows from a blunt object to the back of the head, and that's what killed her. What they thought was weird, the police, is there was really no blood at the scene. And to the police on the ground in the room, they thought that the blood had actually been drained from her body. There was that much of an absence of blood. So police were like, okay, so she was killed possibly during the sex act. Some people think it was like a doggy style thing and the perpetrator hit her on the back of the head then. So she was hit multiple times on the back of the head with a blunt object. They don't think it was a fist because there was damage to the back of the head. Like more damage than just getting punched multiple times. But there wasn't much blood. In fact, there was so little blood that the cops theorized that one, her body was drained of the blood, but they're like, that's very unlikely. Or that the killer cleaned the blood up from the scene before they left. And that's not unheard of. Obviously, criminals will try to clean up stuff. But the place seemed uniquely clean for a crime scene. What was weird was where the bashes were in her head and her neck. They found saliva. And they're like, what? So, there's not a lot of blood in the body. There's not a lot of blood. They find saliva on the neck by the wounds, on the wounds. And then they find the ladle. The ladle was stained with blood. So at this point, the cops are like, this might be a vampire. Now, of course, they don't think that's an actual, magical, metaphysical, supernatural vampire flying around. But this is a killer who killed a woman when she was not suspecting it, bashed her open, licked her wounds, and then drank more of her blood, and possibly drank so much of her blood that her body was mostly drained of it. Because how much blood's in you? 8 pints, 10 pints? I mean, it would take a lot, but if you brought a bucket, you could take some home with you. So they have saliva on the wounds, they have a blood-stained gravy ladle. Cops are like, okay, whatever sicko did this, killed this woman, most likely drank her blood. Sweden police, they get to work on it. There's a big misconception that police don't investigate the deaths of prostitutes. And that's not true. I read a lot of true crime books, and a lot of times you'll hear people go, oh, just prostitutes died and the cops don't care about prostitutes. It's the opposite. Cops tend to know prostitutes more than they know other people because they talk to them all the time. Cops are constantly arresting prostitutes and then checking up on them and, hey, how's everything going? Police know prostitutes better than they know most people. And when a prostitute goes missing or gets murdered, it actually really affects the police officer because it's somebody in their working area. They know their name, they know their life story. They've had them in the back of the car multiple times, and the girl's like, I'm just trying to get back to my feet, I'm trying to get custody of my kids, whatever it is. The reason why police have a hard time solving the murders of prostitutes is they're very, very mobile. A lot of times they'll work entire coastlines. So they may know them for the 2 years that they're in Detroit or the 2 years they're in Portland, but eventually they'll say, you know what, business isn't that good here. I'm going to go down to San Francisco, or I'm going to go up to New York, or whatever. Because they will just up and leave. A lot of times the police are like, when a prostitute goes missing, they're like, hey, have you guys seen Lily? And people are like, oh, I don't know. Like, she talked about going to New York. And the cop's like, oh, okay, I wish her the best of luck. She's really in the back of someone's truck, rotting. And so you could rack up a lot of prostitute kills, but the idea that police just don't care about investigating prostitute murders is not true. Anyway, so the Swedish police are like, okay, let's catch this guy. Let's find out who drank this woman's blood. Allegedly. They're going to find him, and they're going to be able to sit him down and say what happened. But at the time, they're saying, someone's killed this woman, drank her blood, killed her during intercourse. This is horrible. So that happened in 1932. May 4th of 1932. In August of 1933, nothing. Didn't find the guy. 1942, nothing. 1986, nothing. They've never found this killer. Ever. A guy murders a woman, most likely drank a portion of her blood, leaves, never caught. Never another murder in that area that matched this description. He's known as the Atlas Vampire because it took place in the neighborhood, like the Atlas neighborhood. This person may have died 8 years later during the war. This person may have gone on to have grandchildren and great-grandchildren and kept the secret until he passed away himself. May have been an upstanding member of society, may have been a drug user. Who knows? May have been a mystical vampire, but that's unlikely. May have just been a man who loves to drink human blood and kill a woman. Not a serial killer. No other murders have ever been linked to this, but terrifying. Creepy story. If they had caught him, it would have just been another weirdo who did another weird thing. But the fact that he was still out there, I guess if he was young enough, he could still be out there, but that's unlikely. But it's very likely he was alive during my lifetime. He was an old man while I was a kid, collecting daffodils and looking at windmills. I think that's Holland, actually, but maybe he moved there. Spooky stuff, man. That's definitely a Halloween story for you. Lana has this thing about serial killers operating during wartime, and I do think that's an interesting topic as well. Because if this Atlas Vampire guy, this happens in 1932, and 10 years we're in the middle of war, the start of World War II, who's to say he doesn't go somewhere else into a war zone and engage in his blood-drinking fetish? Young maidens from Deutschland. That was a clip from our daily podcast, Dead Rabbit Radio. Dead Rabbit Radio is available anywhere that you listen to podcasts. It's daily paranormal, conspiracy, and true crime news. If you want to hear the full episode that this clip came from, check the link below. Please like and subscribe. And hit that little bell, too. That does some magical stuff. Thanks, guys.